Welcome in, everybody. Got another edition of the Hot Corner. We're joined today by Griffin Merritt, formerly of the Tennessee Volunteers, now of Ohio State Dental School. And before we get started, I got a couple of sponsors we got to talk about real quick. First one, Old Dominick Tennessee whiskey. It's delicious. It's one of my favorites now. I haven't had a chance to get a pour in today, but you can bet I will be definitely doing that. Always drink responsibly, and visit olddominick.com. And then we also got, of course, I've got Hatch Chili, Chinook seeds. Right before we started, Griffin, what did you tell me your favorite seed flavor was?
Hatch chili for sure.
Hatch
We were
chili.
hooked up by Chinook at Tennessee, and I was always trying to put the Hatch chilies in my bag before the game to hide them from Kirby Cannell.
See a big Hatch chili guy too?
He a big everything guy. Kirby taking all the seeds. Big seed guy. Him and Xander Sechrist.
Well, awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you joining me today. Looking forward to talking some SEC baseball since we got SEC play starting up this weekend.
Yes, sir.
Who's really impressed you across the conference so far this season?
Yeah, so I've done my best to keep up with the stuff as much. I'm pretty busy nowadays, but I watch as many games as I can, and I gotta first and foremost I gotta plug my Vols. Really impressive so far. I went down this past week and I was in Knoxville, got to see him play. And that lineup, serious lineup. Depth, and they kind of got a problem. They got too many hitters. Not everybody, you can only play 9 of them. So, they got guys that can come off the bench too and can pinch hit. They're very depthy. And what I liked about them compared to our lineup last year is they're just a little more complete, in my opinion. I've watched probably 6 or 7 of their games, and they work counts. They hammer pitches when they're ahead. They fight when they're down, and they're finding ways to score, and they're finding ways to win. They've lost one game. It was an extra innings game in Texas against Oklahoma, I believe. But they're rolling and they look real good. And you know what Frank Anderson does with the pitching staff year after year. You give that guy just the guys that can throw a couple baseballs and he'll turn them into a staff. So it's been really impressive to see him, handle that turnover from, the team I was on was a pitching first team, loaded with arms and depth. And, Frank's job was probably pretty easy last year. And then, what he's doing this year is pretty impressive. They bring in a bunch of transfers and things and, making it work. So it'll be interesting to see how they do in SEC play. I guess is AJ Russell will be starting again once he's healthy, and they need to figure out the Sunday starter going forward. But, some of those arms will get challenged versus some better hitters. But I think that lineup is going to be just fine come Friday. Other than that, the other team that's really impressed me has been Alabama. Going in, all the stuff that went down with them last year, and you got to get a lot of guys leave. You have first-year coach at Alabama, and they're winning. If you're winning right away, things are good. They've had some big wins. They beat Indiana. They beat, they've been tested a little bit early. So I think that Tennessee-Alabama series, I was telling my dad last night, that's going to tell us a lot. Tell you how for real Tennessee is, or if Alabama's really, turned the page quickly. So those two teams have impressed me, and A&M's looked real good, and South Carolina's looked good. I'd like to see Florida play a little better. Florida has some losses that they shouldn't have lost, so we'll see if they can turn the page. But conference is filled with talent every year, and it's no different this year.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you mentioned Alabama. I mean, they're hitting an insane 345 as a team. Like that's unreal. Lead the conference, obviously. I mean, by a wide margin, by about 15 points, they lead the conference, in batting average. And then, I mean, your Vols, Billy Amack, man, he's been off to a heck of a start.
They've looked a good player.
Yeah. And AJ Russell, man, I mean, Frank keeps finding these guys who can throw 100. Like, I don't know where he keeps finding them at.
Yeah, they grow on trees, I guess, around Frank Anderson. But no, AJ has a cool story, and one day I hope you guys get him on here because he has a cool story. But I remember AJ's first collegiate experience, I guess, was in the fall because he was a freshman last year, and I think he gave up a home run to the first batter he faced. I was the second batter, and first pitch he threw me, I hit a home run. And then I think he gave up like 4 more home runs over the next 2 innings. And I remember he walked off the mound and he was like, "Man, like, is this place for me?" kind of thing. And we were like, "Just stick with it." And not even a short season. 4 or 5 months later, he's dominating in the SEC, and then now he's highly touted as a pretty blue chip first rounder come next draft. So it's kind of crazy how quickly things can turn around. And everybody was hitting off of him, and everybody was like, "Oof, this kid's going to be good." And I just don't think he really felt like it that day for sure, especially when it's your first experience. But AJ's a stud, and Tennessee's going to be real good when he gets back.
Yeah, for sure. We got to talk about, my team, the LSU Tigers.
Yeah,
they do what?
I was trying to leave him out of it. I was kidding.
Yeah, I know that kind of left a bad taste in y'all's mouth, after the way your season ended last year.
Yeah, no, I had a good experience playing LSU, really. Sometimes I played so many teams in college, man, playing in 2 different conferences, and as many teams I got to play. And there are some teams that just like you don't really enjoy playing against. You don't get along, or not in a competitive way. I mean, just like they're just not the best people. But no, LSU was. I mean, I got along with all those guys, and they were just real good. And if it was pretty apparent that they were the most talented team in the country last year, and it took them exactly where I thought it would.
Yeah, I mean, they ended off the season real nice. Lost a ton off that team, though. Not just talent. I mean, when you look at Cruz and Skeens and Morgan, those guys, but experience too. You think about like Kay Beloso, Gavin Dugas, and those guys. And that seems to be, from what I've seen so far from them, is where they're lacking is that experience. They've had some inconsistency offensively. They've been pretty elite on the mound, especially starting pitching. Even with Paul Skeens being gone, they brought in Gage Jump from UCLA. He's been awesome for them. Luke Holman from Alabama. He's been, absolutely lights out. He has an ERA of 0. So he's been awesome. What do you think about the Tigers this year?
Yeah, I think they're dealing with a little bit of what Tennessee we dealt with last year from the turnover from the 2021 or 2022 team for Tennessee, where you had all that experience and combined with talent, and they kind of ran the conference that year. But no, I think hitting takes time, and I think those guys need some at bats. And they're young. Paxton Kling's young, Brady Neal's young. Jared Jones is still young. Like these guys need some time. And from a guy that's kind of been through it and amassed a whole lot of at bats in his career, you can't simulate game at bats. You really can't. You do your best you can in practice or in inner squads, but those things take time. Those situations take some time, and I think the hitting will come along. I think that's probably why the pitching is so ahead right now. Is you just said Holman and Jump are kind of dominating the staff, but this isn't new to them. Holman's thrown in the SEC for 2 years, and Gage Jumps. It's not like he's his first year throwing, but like some of these other guys don't even have 100 at bats in their career yet. Like meaningful 100 at bats, playing every day 100 at bats. So it's going to take time for sure. And having a huge turnover in your lineup always makes it a little hard to just kind of figure it out. But at least how it worked out for us last year is we just progressively got better at the plate as we went. The pitching was always there for us, but it took time for Tennessee to start figuring things out at the plate. And then the second half of the year was much better for us because of that. And then, I feel like there's probably going to be a very similar thing happen in Baton Rouge this year.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely on that track. Another team that's been really hot out of the gate is, you mentioned them before, is A&M. Last year, man, their pitching was, just flat out not good.
Right.
They struggled a lot. But this year, their pitching's been, incredible. They've got they're pitching to a just over a 1.62 ERA as a staff right now. Crazy stats. What do you think has gone into that development of their pitching staff from year to year?
Yeah, I haven't been able to catch too many A&M games this year, and I played against 3 times in a weekend, and then the SEC tournament last year, and I kind of thought the same thing. You know, Last year they just didn't have pitching depth. Um, they had some front end arms. Detmers was good on Fridays. They had some guys that were starting games well, but then in the pen it was either a drop off of stuff or really good stuff and no strikes. So I know they had a good somebody was closing for him, had a real good arm, just didn't throw a bunch of strikes. So um, like I said, I haven't been able to catch too many of their games yet, but the talent's has always been there. I mean, you're Texas A&M, you're in Texas, like you're going to have players, So a part of it is probably just development, getting another year under those kids' belts, and then hitting wise, I know the big outfielder's been crushing the ball and kind of carrying them. So Texas, throw them in the mix, man. It gets even more complicated. I think the conference is really wide open this year. Last year, I think it was a little top heavy. You had your LSU, you had your Florida, Arkansas, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, South Carolina were all kind of in that that second tier of the conference last year. But this year, I don't know if I see a full out beast yet. I think there's just it's all full of really, really good teams, and the next 10 weeks are going to be pretty fun.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I agree with you. I don't think there's one just like juggernaut of a team or anything like that. There's just a lot of really good teams. You mentioned Florida's had some early season struggles, lost some games they shouldn't have. They got they lost a ton on the mound. And look about Sproat and Waldrop.
Right.
And then they bring in the freshman Liam Peterson. He started on the weekend rotation. They moved Kate Fisher up. Kate Fisher has not performed very well in that Friday night role. What do you think Florida can do to try and, I don't want to say right the ship because it's still pretty early, but, just get things going back on track?
Yeah, they're dealing with what's going to become common in the SEC from year to year, even more than it has in the past. Before NIL transfer one and done world, it was 3-year, 4-year guys in the SEC. So you're dealing with more of a limited amount of turnover because you've had, guys aren't transferring and leaving. You're not plugging and playing. Now it's become such a free agent world where, coaching, I think, is going to have a different challenge. And I think Florida is kind of running into it right now is the coaching is going to turn away from development, away from getting the 15-year-old, 16-year-old kid, getting them to campus, developing them for a couple years, and then getting a product. So now it's going to be, how quickly can I set my roster for the year? That's going to be drastically different year to year now because of how college sports are, and how quickly can I get that team up to par and playing as a team? Florida's fighting it right now. I saw it happen at Tennessee last year for some time. It's a different challenge for coaches. Coaches aren't used to it, right? You think everything's changing. The coaches aren't used to coaching teams like that, where it's every single team is just so different from the year before now because you have 20, 30 new players now on these teams every year. So I think Florida is in that aspect of it a little bit. You lose a lot, you had a ton of talent leave, and now you're kind of freshman guy, transfer guy, trying to plug and play, and you just got to get it all to come together. So Coach Sullivan down there will find a way, and Florida's going to win a lot of games regardless. But for them, the biggest thing would be to just get off hot in the conference. You start first couple weeks in the conference, and you tear it up, and you kind of forget about some of those non-conference hiccups. So I think Florida has the next couple weeks would be big for them to just get off to a good start. It's kind of a second season. That's how all the players treat it. You have your non-conference, and then you have your conference. It's like a second opening day kind of thing. So regardless of you're hitting 500 going into conference, or you're hitting 200, or you're 20-0, or you're 0-20, it's a new start. So come Friday, everything kind of goes out the window of what's happened the first month and a half of the season.
Yeah. Another team that we haven't really talked about yet, but their coach may be in some hot water. Mississippi State, they've come out looking pretty good. That lineup is, Dakota Jordan has just been on fire. He's been
Yeah,
awesome to watch. Yeah.
yeah.
What have you seen from the Bulldogs?
Yeah, I thought last year when we played Mississippi State, they came in and you see the record, but then you play them and you're like, man, how has this team not won more games? Like, how has the team not won more games? You see the hitters and the talent of the hitters, and you got guys, every guy's throwing 97, 98. It's like, man, how have they not won games? Like, the talent's there. It wasn't like Coach Lamanis is fielding a team that shouldn't be in this conference. He has. It's like, why are they not winning? So for them, I feel like it was just a matter of time, a little bit. I don't know too much about him. I mean, maybe you lose a little bit of confidence and like things like that, and you just don't play up to how good you actually are. You don't realize how good you actually are. There's just a completely different. I think they won like 13 games in a row or something. I actually have a friend that I played with when I was at Cincinnati who plays at Mississippi State now. He's a catcher, and I talked to him here and there, and he just said that it's things are rolling. So, like I said, sometimes in baseball, man, especially in this conference where everybody's pretty on an equal talent playing field, or at least has the talent to beat everybody. If they play well, it's who's hot. I mean, you saw Ole Miss, 2 years ago? It's about getting hot. Everybody in this conference got the talent, not a question. We flew last year. We start conference play, and we're, I think, 2 or 3 in the country, whatever. We fly to Missouri, thinking we're just going to go into Columbia, run Missouri for 3 games, and go back to Knoxville and get ready for Texas A&M. We pull up to Missouri, who I think had lost like 8 or 9 games at that point, and they sweep us, blew us off the field, blew us off. We didn't even know what hit us. Beat us Friday, got rained out Saturday, beat us in 2-7 Sunday. We got our asses back on the plane and flew to Knoxville. Didn't know what happened. So everybody in this conference has the talent to beat everybody. So it's going to be about who's hot. And right now, Mississippi State's hot. Ole Miss is hot. So we'll see if who can carry that through the 10 weeks of hell they're about to go through. But, sometimes it's better to be the hot team than the team that is a little flashy on paper with talent.
Yeah, I mean, definitely seems to be the case a lot of times in the SEC. It's just all about getting hot at the right time. Another team that's been playing really well that we haven't mentioned yet is Vanderbilt. I think they're a team that seems to do it more along kind of the old way you were talking about, where you get the 15, 16-year-old committed, and they coach them up. And, that's a lineup that's full of juniors and seniors with a couple of sophomores like sprinkled in there, and they're pitching. I mean, Carter Holton, I mean, you saw him last year. He was awesome. Bringing in Grayson Carter, he's been really good for them. They still got Devin Futrell there. What do you think about the Vanderbilt Commodores this year?
Yeah, I think it goes back to kind of what I said before of how the game itself is kind of evolving. I think that age and experience now even holds a bigger weight. You can't, like I said, you can't replicate experience. You can't replicate, hundreds of at-bats or, 80 innings a season. Like you can't, there's nothing you can do as a coach to replicate that experience. So another trend that I think I've seen in college baseball now is age is winning. So you have these transfers now, but a lot of these transfers are a little older too. Like you have a lot of grad transfers. I was a grad transfer. People love grad transfers. One, because you have a ton of experience. You, as a coach, you know what you're going to get because you can check 4 years of numbers. Pretty much the kind of player you're going to get, and then you bring into a clubhouse as much experience as you can. Like when I went to Tennessee, I had a job I had to do on the field, but I also had a clubhouse job of I had experience that a lot of these kids didn't have. How can I take my experience and just like make them better because of it? Right? Because for me, all I want to do was win last year. Like 1 year, all I want to do is win. So it's like you want to come in. It's like if I can make these kids better and just using my experiences to help them kind of like jumpstart their experiences, the quicker they get better, the quicker we're going to win. So, because, that was kind of part of my job. So I think, back to the Vanderbilt thing is they have guys that have been there. Futrell's been there. Like you said, Grayson Carter, I think this is his second year. All those infielders were all freshmen last year, but they played every day. Like that jump from that first to second year when you have a year under your belt. And, this time last year, Diaz and all those the shortstop and the other infielder are all sitting here and they're like, man, what's the SEC like? What's Friday going to be like? I never played in an SEC game. Man, are their arms like much better than what we saw in the fall? Is the crowd going to be not like they don't know? Now they know. Promise you right now, they're not sitting here stressing as much as they did a year ago today. So, when you're as a baseball player, when you're comfortable and you've been in this situation before, it's way, way, way easier to perform. So I wouldn't be surprised if Andy gets off and has a pretty good conference run as well, because they do seem to be one of the more experienced teams in the league.
Yeah, you mentioned that a lot of grad transfers coming in, not necessarily at Vanderbilt, but just in general, a lot of grad transfers. They come in for the 1 year and they've got the responsibility in the clubhouse. How hard is it to kind of assimilate those guys that are only going to they're only going to be there 1 year, and to kind of build into that role. So some of the younger guys, still look up to you. Maybe that's a sophomore and you're like, oh, well, you weren't here last year. Who are you to talk to me? How does that play out in the locker room?
Yeah, that's another challenge. Like I said, coaching's now maybe not as much get them and develop them versus get them and make it fit and work. You can definitely get some clubhouse problems when you're bringing guys in and, they're kind of taking positions for a year and they hadn't been at the school before. And there are guys that are still going through the traditional, first, second, sitting for 2 years, developing kind of role. And then you got a guy that comes in and takes your spot. And like that obviously causes problems. But, the way I thought about it is I'd earned a ton of respect at Cincinnati, but I didn't have that respect at Tennessee. Nobody cared. So I had to go in and earn it from day one. So when I went in, I acted like I was a freshman. Right? I didn't cut my head down, didn't say anything. I just went to work. And what I did know is that I knew how to work and how to go about things the right way. I had learned that in my time at Cincinnati. So I just took care of my business and went about my business the right way every day. And, pretty quickly, month and a half in, you start getting people that realize like, man, like this guy does it the right way. This guy's, attacking weights the right way. He's the first guy at the field. He's staying here late. Like, he's performing. Like, maybe this is a guy I wanted to go talk to. And like, I didn't really force myself to, push those experiences on the kids. I waited till they wanted to come to me to ask me. And once I was able to get them to come to me to start asking like, hey man, like, how should I do this? Or how, you got any advice on this? That's when I knew that I had earned their respect. So for any grad transfers that hear this, like it is a second start, you do need to go in and you need to earn different guys in a different situations respect. But you're also, if you're grad transferring to one of these schools, you figured it out. You figured college baseball out to a degree. So don't think that you need to change anything. Just, you have to kind of earn that respect before you're able to just go in there and kind of, run the show.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I appreciate you sharing that perspective. But, kind of going back a little bit to the baseball here this year, looking at Arkansas, kind of been ranked number 1 by most publications this week after Wake Forest, drops their series to Duke. But, the Hogs have kind of struggled a little bit offensively. They're kind of right around the middle of the pack of the SEC, hitting at 300. But, I mean, their starting pitching is, some of the best in the country. I mean, Hagen Smith is just an absolute dude, and Brady Tigert is too. I mean, the stuff that Hagen's done, so far this year, he's getting compared to Paul Skeens, just from the left side, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
What do you see from that?
I hit off Hagen Smith last year in Fayetteville, and that was no fun. Fastball, it's like, now he's throwing even harder than he was last year. Last year he was, low, like about mid 90s, but it just felt firm, man. Some guys, not all 95 is the same. Sometimes you get in, it's like, man, this guy's throwing 95, feels like it's 85. And it's like, this guy's throwing 95, it looks like it's 130. And Hagen Smith was one of the guys where it's like, oh, you're like, all right, 95, like, see it every day, not a big deal. Get in the box, and it's like, I just got blown up. Like, not all 95s are the same, and his always played up. top of the zone, firm fastball, ton of spin, hides it well, left-handed, good extension. It's just not a great combination for a hitter. And then you pair off a real sharp breaking ball where, if you're just sitting, guessing, selling fastball and he throws the breaking ball, you got no shot. You're going to look silly. So he was definitely not fun at bat. And he was out of the pen when I played him last year. And I think Tiger was hurt when we went to Fayetteville, so I didn't get to see him. But I knew coming in to the year and from all the publications, Arkansas they were on the mound. They're so depthy on the mound and pitching wins. So they have enough pieces in the lineup, and they're gonna get them to hit. So if they can get them to hit, man, they got a scary staff. Probably the deepest staff in the conference, in my opinion, is most likely Arkansas. So if they can figure out the hitting, and the hitting 300 as a team isn't, by SEC standards, non-conference preseason, it's like, the middle of the pack. But if they can carry a 300 average through the next 15 or through the next 10 weeks, they're going to win a ton of games. So they're going to start. The tone will be set for them on the mound, but I know, and I just saw like Stovall just came back, and they've had some guys that have been hurt. So you get those bats in the lineup, man. Those, like I said before, those experienced bats that have the at bats. You get them back in there, man. Stuff can change quick. So, if they start hitting, I do probably think that Arkansas will throw it the best if they stay healthy.
Yeah, their staff is just ridiculous. Another team that's been pitching it really well. That was kind of their big question mark coming to the season is South Carolina. Everybody figured that they were going to be, big boppers, and you got Petrie and Messina and Casas and those guys just, launching home runs. And, the question mark was, were they going to be able to pitch it enough? But man, they've been pitching it extremely well and kind of struggled a little bit on the, in the box. Although they're not hitting great, hitting 280 as a team. So it's not great. Bottom half of the SEC, but their walks, like their on base percentage is one of the best in the league, one of the best in the country. What do you make of that as a hitter? Like when you see somebody, a team that has a low batting average, but an incredibly high walk rate?
There's two things for that. Either you're missing a lot of pitches and you're hitting a lot of foul balls, which is normal early in the season. So pitches that, you should be hitting, you're missing, and you're fouling them off. And then eventually that stringing out at bats are turning into walks. But at the same time, you're missing a lot of the pitches you should be hitting, and that's going to lower your average. So to me, whenever my average felt like it was lower than it should be, and I'm walking more than I usually am, it's usually because I'm missing the pitches I should hit, but I'm fouling them off. Like you're just like not quite there yet, which is really normal at the beginning of the year. Really normal at the beginning of the year, especially when you play up north. Like when South Carolina's not north, but when I played north, there's like, man, you get in there, it's like the first weekend, you're like, man, I'm seeing everything. Like I'm seeing it well. I feel like I'm on time. Like I'm just missing. I'm fouling them straight back. Then you end the series and you're 2 for 8 and you had 6 walks because you string out so many at bats because you're missing pitches you should hit. But at the same time, you're running pitch at bats into 8, 9, 10 pitch at bats because you're fouling pitches off. So that could be something. It also could be a combination of some bad luck where you're just, you're having good at bats and your walks are up and you're not chasing, but the balls you're hitting hard are just, guys can make plays. You're hitting them right at people and, you're not getting a whole lot to fall. And, that usually happens more on like an individual basis than a team basis over, it's just the game. Game's averages. Everybody always asks, like, I want stats. I want stats at the end of the year. It's like, look at every stat. Every stat's an average besides, home runs or doubles or things like that. But like everybody wants to hit for a good average. It's an average. So it's your average at bat. So for them, right now, maybe they're hitting the ball real hard and just not getting a lot out of it. But you play that out for the whole season, those numbers will move. Just like hitters, individuals, like that's what I usually dealt with as individuals and myself mainly. But my thing was like, I'm going to get 250 at-bats this year. If I can go up to the plate and have the same approach and the same confidence and the same mindset and execute for 250 at-bats, regardless if I strike out, I hit a home run or I hit a laser to the center fielder and Dylan Cruz catches it without moving. If I can do that 250 times for a year, I'll take whatever my average is going to be because I know where it's going to be. It's going to be within this range. But it's when you go up there for 250 at bats with totally different mindsets and you're worried about, your stats and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And now you're not consistent for 250 at bats. That's where you're playing with fire. And then you're probably going to perform on that lower end of what your talent level is. So if South Carolina, if they hear me here, but they just need to keep swinging. Just keep swinging. You got the guys. Like the bats in the box aren't any different. Just keep swinging. All those guys, Messina, Cassis, some of those other, like they're all gonna. That Petrie, like those guys are gonna hit 330. Like it's just what it is at the end of the year if they just stay with what they usually do instead of trying to freak out or anything. But I mean, everybody knew Dylan Cruz was gonna hit 400, right? Everybody knew he was gonna hit 400. I came in and he was hitting 600, and even a guy that good, we knew he wasn't gonna hit 600. It's the game. You're not gonna hit 600, but we knew he was gonna hit 400, and that's his average. That's how his average plate appearance went. And it was better than anybody else. That's why he's the best player in college baseball last year. But everybody knew what he was going to hit. All you have to do is just be him for 250 at-bats. That's it. And those guys, all these superstars in the SEC, if they can just approach every at-bat the same for the season, and that's way, 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 way easier said than done because it's like this. But if you can just stay flatlined as much as you can, you're going to play to how good you should be at the end of the year.
Yeah, I just got one more question for you before we get you out of here. But I can't let you go without talking about Charlie Condon. I mean, man, 13 bombs. He just hit his 13th earlier today.
Yeah, I saw that. Man. The most I hit in the season was 19, and I hit 18 when I was at UT. This guy's pushing 13 before conference, man. That's nuts.
What makes him so good?
What makes him good, and this is probably a little bit over the top of what the average listener of this podcast gets into the baseball metrics part of it, but his contact rate with his hard hit rate, usually that's an inverse correlation, right? So the harder I hit the ball, you usually have some more swing and miss because you're swinging harder. It's like in golf. If I go up there for a drive and I'm swinging 100%, like sure, maybe 2 out of 10 I just smoke and they're 350 middle of the fairway. But the harder I'm swinging, the more I'm gonna, not swing and miss, but the more you're gonna have the bad contact. What he's doing super well is he has such a hard hit rate, but he's also doesn't swing and miss. So you combine those two, and that's where you kind of get those unicorn guys. That's how Langford was last year. Guys that hit the ball extremely hard, but they don't swing and miss. Usually there's the trade-off. It's like, man, this guy doesn't hit the ball real hard, but he doesn't strike out. Okay, like that's usually a player. Then you have another player. It's like this guy smashes the ball, but he strikes out 80 times a season. Okay, that's that category of player. What every scout wants is the guy that hits the ball hard and he doesn't swing and miss, and that's what Condon's doing right now. I saw a chart on Twitter where he's the number one collegiate hitter in the country right now for hard hit rate and swing and miss rate. So that's how you hit home runs, kids. You hit the ball really hard and you hit it very consistently. You hit, and you combine that with he's tall and he has leverage in his swing. He has a natural loft to his swing where he's hitting the ball extremely hard, very consistently in the air, time after time after time, and he's strong. That's how you hit home runs. That's how you hit 14 or 13 home runs before conference play. He's just playing averages again. Like he's just averagely hitting the ball on a home run trajectory more than anybody else in the country. And if he keeps doing it, you can just play out the numbers and we could all do the math. And, he's going to hit 45 home runs by the end of the year. But we'll see if that keeps going.
Yeah, that would be wild.
Yeah. That's the big thing, man. There's always trade-offs, right? Some guys throw real hard, can't throw strikes. Some guys throw 85 and can pick corners. Where you get the guys the schemes that, now you're throwing really hard and you're commanding the zone. And now you find the Condons where it's like, now you're hitting the ball harder than anybody, and you're also hitting it more consistently than anybody. That's where you start finding the special players.
Well, man, I appreciate you, your insight. This was awesome.
Yeah.
I know I learned a lot. And yeah, I appreciate it. And I look forward to maybe having you on again.
Yeah, man, for sure. I appreciate you having me. I love getting to put baseball back in my day, man. I miss it for sure. But it's going to be a fun next 10 weeks as it's sitting on this side of the screen now. Not being out there, it kills me still, but it does give you a different perspective as a fan. It also lets me root for some of these teams a little bit more. I didn't really like any of them last year, so gives me more teams to watch.
For sure. Well, I appreciate it, man. Thanks.
All right, man. Yeah, take care.
All right.